I never thought my life would change because of a phone call that lasted less than 90 seconds. After 9 years of dedication, sleepless nights, and sacrificed weekends, his voice came through cold and detached. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. Clear out your desk by end of day. Then the line went dead. No explanation, no thank you. Just silence. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone while my entire world crumbled around me. My name is Harper Lane, and until that phone call, I thought I understood how the world worked. 39 years old, single, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Coldford, a dying industrial city in the Midwest where factories close faster than new businesses open. For 9 years, I'd been the operations manager at Veronix Logistics, a mid-sized tech distribution company that promised innovative supply chain solutions, but mostly just moved boxes from point A to point B. Mitchell Grady, my boss, had hired me when I was 30. Back then, he'd seemed different, professional, even paternal in his own calculated way. He'd shake your hand firmly, remember your birthday with a generic card from the dollar store, and occasionally ask about your weekend plans. But his kindness always came with conditions, unspoken contracts you'd only discover when you failed to meet them. The morning of the call started like any other. I'd arrived at 6:45 a.m., 45 minutes before official hours, just as I had every day for 9 years. The warehouse lights hummed their familiar fluorescent song. I made coffee in the break room's ancient machine that only I knew how to coax into working. I reviewed the shipping schedules, checked inventory reports, responded to 16 emails from overnight. Then my phone rang at 9:17 a.m. Mitchell's name on the screen. Harper. His voice was flat, businesslike. I'll make this quick. We're restructuring. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. I remember the strangest details from that moment, the way the coffee mug felt suddenly heavy in my hand, how the cursor on my computer screen blinked in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat, the sound of a forklift beeping in the warehouse below. I don't understand, I managed to say. The quarterly review is next week. I've prepared. It's done. Harper. HR will email you the separation agreement. Clear out by 5. Security will escort you. Mitchell. I've been here 9 years. 9 years without a sick day. Without. Good luck, Harper. The line went dead. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Around me, the office continued its mundane ballet. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the printer jamming on the third floor like it did every Tuesday. Nobody knew yet that I'd just become a ghost. My personal life was as empty as my desk would soon be. My mother had died of pancreatic cancer 3 years ago. A brutal 4-month decline that I'd navigated alone while never missing a deadline at work. My father? He'd walked out when I was 12, sent birthday cards until I was 18, then disappeared entirely. No siblings. A few college friends who drifted away as they got married, had kids, moved to suburbs I couldn't afford to visit. I'd given everything to Veronix. 60-hour weeks were my normal. I'd canceled 3 vacations in 5 years because something came up. I knew every truck route, every driver's name, every client's ordering patterns. I'd built their entire digital tracking system from scratch, saved them hundreds of thousands in efficiency improvements. By 5 p.m., my entire professional existence fit into 2 bankers' boxes. A security guard named Derek, who I'd chatted with every morning for 5 years, couldn't meet my eyes as he walked me to my car. "I'm sorry, Harper," he mumbled. "This ain't right." The parking lot stretched before me, half empty as always. Coldford was bleeding jobs like Veronix had just bled me. I loaded the boxes into my 10-year-old Honda, the one I'd kept running because I was being responsible with money, saving for a future that had just been deleted with a 90-second phone call. The anger hadn't hit yet, just this hollow disbelief, like I'd been shoved off a cliff and was still falling, waiting for the ground to rush up and meet me. The first week, I kept waking up at 5:30 a.m. Muscle memory dragged me out of bed, and I'd be halfway through my morning routine before remembering I had nowhere to go. The coffee maker would gurgle its familiar tune, and I'd stand there in my kitchen, fully dressed in business casual, holding a travel mug with no destination. By week 2, the rhythm broke. I started waking at odd hours, 3 a.m., noon, 4 p.m. Time became elastic, meaningless. Tuesday felt like Saturday. I'd find myself checking work emails before remembering my access had been revoked. The login screen mocked me. Invalid credentials. The job search began with foolish optimism. 9 years of experience, stellar references, a track record of measurable success. Surely someone would want that. I polished my resume until it gleamed, wrote cover letters that struck the perfect balance between confident and humble. I uploaded them into the void of online job portals, those digital black holes where hope goes to die. The responses were form letters when they came at all. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Your qualifications are impressive, but we'll keep your resume on file. Most companies didn't bother responding. My applications disappeared into automated systems, probably filtered out by algorithms looking for keywords I didn't know to include. The few interviews I managed to get were exercises in humiliation. 20-somethings in HR departments asked me about my 5-year plan with straight faces. They wanted to know why I'd been let go, their eyes already suspicious. Restructuring sounded like a lie even when it was true. One interviewer, maybe 25, asked if I was comfortable with technology, while I sat there having built entire logistics systems from scratch. At night, I dreamed about the warehouse. Not nightmares exactly, just mundane dreams where I was back at my desk, answering emails, scheduling deliveries. I'd wake up and feel the loss all over again, fresh as that first morning. The spreadsheets haunted me, columns of numbers I'd memorized, delivery routes I could recite like poetry, inventory codes that had become a second language. My savings account became a countdown timer. 8,943 hours. Rent was $1,200, utilities, groceries, car insurance, the minimum payment on the credit card I'd used for my mother's funeral expenses. I did the math obsessively, calculating how many weeks until 0, 11, maybe 12 if I stopped buying anything beyond rice and beans. The apartment felt smaller every day. I'd pace from the living room to the bedroom, 14 steps, then back again. The walls seemed to lean in, conspiring. The refrigerator hummed criticism. Even the houseplants looked disappointed. Natalie called on a Thursday afternoon. She'd been let go from Veronix the year before. Another restructuring casualty. Harper, I heard what happened, that bastard Mitchell. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town, one of those places with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like disappointment. Natalie looked older, worn down. She was working at a grocery store now, stocking shelves overnight for $11 an hour. He did the same thing to me, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. No warning, just gone. You know they hired someone's niece for my position? 22 years old, no experience. How do you stand it? I asked. She laughed, bitter as the coffee. You don't. You just keep going until you can't. The worst part was the invisibility. Without a job, I ceased to exist in any meaningful way. No one called, former coworkers avoided me like unemployment was contagious. I'd run into them at the store and watch them pretend not to see me, suddenly fascinated by their phones or the nutritional information on cereal boxes. LinkedIn became a special kind of torture. Former colleagues posting about their promotions, their team-building exercises, their corporate victories. Mitchell had posted something about exciting changes at Veronix and building a dynamic team for the future. 67 likes, 12 congratulatory comments. I started having panic attacks in the middle of the night. My chest would tighten, breath coming in gasps, certain I was dying alone in this apartment where they'd find my body days later. The emergency room doctor prescribed Xanax and suggested therapy I couldn't afford. Adjustment disorder, she called it, as if this was just a minor adjustment, a slight recalibration of expectations. 3 months in, I understood what Natalie meant. You don't stand it. You just exist in the space between what was and what might never be again. floating in a kind of corporate purgatory, waiting for a redemption that the algorithms have already decided you don't deserve. 4 months into unemployment, I started doing something pathetic, Googling Veronics obsessively. Not for job postings, but just to see if the company still existed without me. It did, of course. The world hadn't stopped spinning because Harper Lane got fired. But what I found during those late-night searches started to paint a different picture. The first red flag was a small mention in the Coldford Business Journal about an internal audit at Veronics. 3 sentences buried on page 4. Companies don't conduct internal audits unless something's wrong. I knew that from 9 years of watching Mitchell navigate corporate politics like a snake through grass. I still had my old work laptop. They'd never asked for it back, typical of their sloppy protocols. My access was revoked, but my email archive was still stored locally. Thousands of messages I'd never deleted because Mitchell always said, "Keep everything. You never know when you'll need to cover your ass." At 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, unable to sleep, I started reading through them, not looking for anything specific, just torturing myself with memories of when I mattered. That's when I found the threads that didn't add up. Shipping manifests that showed different numbers than what we'd reported. Invoices for technology equipment that I'd never seen arrive at the warehouse. Mitchell's name on all of them. Natalie and I met again. Same diner, same cracked booth. She looked nervous when I mentioned the discrepancies. "You need to leave this alone. Harper." "You knew?" She stared into her coffee. "I suspected. Before they fired me, I was processing some strange insurance claims, equipment damaged in transit that I knew never shipped. But what was I going to do? Report it? To who? Mitchell. How much are we talking about?" Over the year I was tracking, maybe 300,000. But Harper, these people destroyed our lives. Natalie laughed, hollow. "No, they inconvenienced us. We're still breathing, keep digging, and that might change." But I couldn't stop. I cross-referenced the suspicious shipments with the delivery schedules I'd memorized. The patterns emerged like a photograph developing in solution. Phantom shipments, always on the last Friday of the month. Always signed off by Mitchell. Always involving Charlotte Dean from finance. Through LinkedIn, I saw that Mitchell had hired my replacement, Ashley Brennan, 26 years old, fresh MBA, and most importantly, Charlotte Dean's cousin. Her profile photo showed a bright smile and eyes that had never seen a 60-hour week. The announcement post called her a dynamic addition to our forward-thinking team. I reached out to Rick Bateman, one of our old drivers who'd been laid off 6 months before me. We met at a truck stop outside town. Rick looked rough. Unemployment had hit him harder than me. His truck was gone, repossessed. He was living with his brother, picking up day labor when he could. "Those Friday runs," I said. "You remember anything unusual?" Rick's jaw tightened. "You didn't hear this from me." "Rick." "I mean it, Harper. I got kids." He pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands. "Mitchell had me do off-book deliveries, cash only, no manifests. Said it was for special clients who wanted discretion." "Where?" "Warehouse on the south side, not ours. Some place called Regent Storage. I'd drop the trucks. Someone else would unload them. Never saw what was inside." "How often?" "Once a month. Always the last Friday." He took a long drag. "I kept my mouth shut because I needed the job. Look where that got me." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small USB drive. "I wasn't supposed to have a dash cam. Company policy. But after my buddy got sued for an accident he didn't cause, I installed one anyway. Footage from the last 6 months I worked there. Maybe there's something useful." "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you're the only one crazy enough to do something with it." He crushed out his cigarette. "And because Mitchell needs to burn, he threw us away like trash. All of us." Back in my apartment, I plugged in the USB drive. Hours of footage, most of it highway and loading docks. But there, in the Friday files, gold. Clear shots of the Regent storage facility. License plates. And in one perfect frame, Mitchell himself, shaking hands with someone outside a truck loaded with boxes marked with Veronic's inventory codes. Charlotte Dean stood beside him, checking something on a tablet. I had them. The question was what to do with it. The smart move would be to walk away. Like Natalie said, find another job, another city, another life. Let Mitchell and Charlotte continue their scam. But I kept thinking about Rick's shaking hands, about Natalie stocking shelves at midnight, about Derek the security guard who couldn't meet my eyes, about all of us deemed expendable while Mitchell and Charlotte stole from the company that had stolen our lives. They thought we were nothing, forgotten, powerless. They were wrong about that. The dashcam footage was just the beginning. I needed more documents, financial records, a clear paper trail that even Veronic's board couldn't ignore. But Charlotte Dean wasn't stupid. She'd covered her tracks well, and Mitchell had been playing this game longer than I'd been alive. I started with what I knew, the Regent storage facility. Public records showed it was owned by a shell company called MCD Holdings. MCD, Mitchell, Charlotte, Dean. They weren't even trying to be clever. The arrogance of it made my stomach turn. The company had been registered just 2 months after Charlotte joined Veronix as CFO. Getting inside information meant finding someone still at the company who'd talk. Most of my former colleagues had unfriended me on social media. Unemployment is contagious in the corporate world. But there was Marcus in IT, a quiet guy who'd always eaten lunch alone, reading science fiction novels in the break room. I messaged him on an old gaming platform we'd both used. Need a favor, coffee? We met at a bookstore cafe downtown, far from Veronix's territory. Marcus looked uncomfortable, kept checking over his shoulder. I shouldn't be here, he said. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. Aren't you? He pushed his glasses up his nose, a nervous tick I remembered. You want information about the company. That's proprietary. They fired me, Marcus, 9 years, and they threw me away like garbage. They'll do the same to me if... They'll do it anyway. You know that. We all knew it. We just pretended job security still existed. Marcus stared at his untouched latte. What do you want to know? The internal audit, what triggered it? A whistleblower complaint, anonymous, about inventory discrepancies. My heart jumped. Someone else had noticed. And Mitchell's running the investigation himself. Says it's a software glitch in the tracking system, the one you built. That's impossible. That system. I know. It's bulletproof. I've been through the code. Marcus finally looked at me directly. He's blaming you, Harper, the dead woman walking who can't defend herself. The anger that had been simmering for months boiled over. They weren't just erasing me, they were rewriting history to make me the villain. There's more, Marcus said. Charlotte's been moving money, large transfers to vendor accounts that don't match any actual vendors in our system. I noticed it during routine maintenance. Can you prove it? Not without access I'm not supposed to have. He pulled out a piece of paper, slid it across the table. But maybe you know someone who could make sense of these account numbers. I recognized them immediately. Shadow accounts I'd seen on those archived emails, accounts that weren't supposed to exist. After Marcus left, I sat there studying the numbers. Each one was a breadcrumb in a trail that led straight to Charlotte and Mitchell. But breadcrumbs weren't enough. I needed the whole loaf. Rick called that evening. There's someone you should meet, Tommy Nguyen. Used to work warehouse security at Regent Storage. Got fired last month for asking too many questions. Tommy met me at a Vietnamese restaurant in the East End, a place that smelled like pho and resignation. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with careful eyes that had seen too much. Rick says you're going after Mitchell Grady. I'm just trying to understand what happened. Tommy laughed. Understanding won't get you anywhere. These people, they own this city. Mitchell, Charlotte, they're connected all the way up. Connected to who? City contractors, police department, even the mayor's office. Veronix gets all the municipal shipping contracts. You think that's because they offer the best service? He pulled out his phone, showed me photos he'd taken during his time at Regent Storage. Trucks being unloaded at night, boxes being repackaged, relabeled. They'd bring in Veronic's merchandise, break it down, ship it out under different companies. Same products, triple the profits. You have evidence? Had. They confiscated my phone when they fired me, but I backed everything up. He gave me a tired smile. Cloud storage. They didn't think a security guard would be that smart. Tommy shared the files with me that night. Videos, photos, shipping logs he'd copied. It was all there. A systematic operation to defraud Veronix, its clients, and probably the insurance companies too. Mitchell and Charlotte at the center of it all. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized how big this was. This wasn't just about embezzlement. This was about an entire network of corruption that treated companies like Veronix as personal piggy banks, while people like me, Rick, Natalie, and Tommy were discarded like broken equipment. I spread everything out on my living room floor. Emails, photos, account numbers, shipping manifests. The pattern was clear as a constellation once you knew what to look for. They'd been doing this for at least 3 years, maybe longer. Millions of dollars siphoned off while they laid off workers to cut costs. My phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Lane. A woman's voice, professional, but warm. My name is Olivia Trent. I'm an investigative journalist with the Coldford Tribune. I understand you used to work at Veronix Logistics. My mouth went dry. How did you get this number? A mutual friend suggested I call someone who drives trucks. Rick. I've been investigating irregularities in city shipping contracts for months. Your name keeps coming up in my research. The operations manager who was suddenly let go right before an internal audit. I don't know anything about. I think you do, Miss Lane. And I think you have information that could expose something significant. The question is whether you're brave enough to share it. I looked at the evidence spread across my floor. Months of digging, of connecting dots, of understanding the machine that had chewed me up and spit me out. What would you need from me? Everything you have, documents, recordings, testimony. In return, I protect you as a source, and we burn this thing to the ground. When? How about now? I'm parked outside your building. Olivia Trent didn't look like a crusader. Sitting in my living room, she seemed more like an exhausted middle school teacher. Cardigan, sensible shoes, coffee-stained notebook. But her eyes were sharp as surgical instruments as she examined each piece of evidence. This is good, she said, photographing the shipping manifests. But it's not enough. We need Mitchell on record, or Charlotte, something that ties them directly to the fraud. They're too careful for that. Everyone makes mistakes when they think they're untouchable. She looked up from the documents. You still have contacts inside? A few. But they're terrified. Fear makes people sloppy. We can use that. Over the next 3 weeks, Olivia and I built our strategy like architects of destruction. She had connections I didn't. A forensic accountant who owed her a favor. A former FBI agent who specialized in corporate fraud. A judge who'd been watching Mitchell for years but never had enough evidence. The plan was surgical. First, we needed to spook them. Make them think the walls were closing in, then catch them trying to cover their tracks. I started with phone calls. Not to Mitchell or Charlotte directly, that would be too obvious. Instead, I called vendors, asking to verify shipments from dates I knew were fraudulent. I contacted insurance companies, requesting copies of claims that shouldn't exist. Each call was carefully logged, recorded when legal. Hi, this is Harper Lane from Veronix Logistics. I'm updating our records and need to verify a shipment from March 30th. There's no record of that shipment, Ms. Lane. Boss, could you check again? The claim was for $47,000 in damaged electronics. I show no claims from Veronix for that date. Perfect. Each denial was another nail. Marcus fed me information from inside, small things that painted a picture. Charlotte had started shredding documents. Mitchell was having closed-door meetings with legal. They'd hired an external IT firm to upgrade the system, really to wipe any traces of their fraud. Then I played my ace. I created a fake identity, Sarah Coleman, an auditor from Brennan and Associates, a real firm that Veronix had worked with before. I had business cards printed, created a LinkedIn profile with a stock photo, even got a burner phone with a professional voicemail. The call to Mitchell was theater. Mr. Grady, this is Sarah Coleman from Brennan and Associates. We've been contracted by your insurance provider to verify some claims discrepancies. I'll need to schedule an on-site review. The silence on the other end was beautiful. I wasn't aware of any external audit. It's routine when claims exceed certain thresholds. I have Thursday the 15th available. I'll need to verify this with, of course, have your people call our offices. In the meantime, please have all shipping records from the last 18 months ready for review. I hung up before he could respond. Olivia had been recording from her equipment, everything legal under state's single-party consent laws. Within hours, Marcus reported chaos. Mitchell had called an emergency meeting. Charlotte was on the phone with someone, nearly screaming. They were moving boxes out of the building, loading them into personal vehicles. They're panicking, Olivia said. Time for phase 2. We hired an actor, an older man named Gerald who did community theater. He looked exactly like what you'd imagine an auditor would, gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses, the personality of unflavored oatmeal. On Thursday the 15th, he walked into Veronix with a briefcase and an attitude of governmental inevitability. He never made it past reception. Mitchell intercepted him immediately, which was what we wanted. While Mitchell was distracted, Tommy and 2 of his friends were photographing the trucks leaving the back of the building. Boxes of evidence being destroyed, we hoped. But Charlotte was smarter than we gave her credit for. She'd spotted Tommy's car, recognized him. The next day, my apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen. But a message was clear. They knew what I was doing. We need to move faster, Olivia said. They're getting desperate. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ashley Brennan, my replacement, Charlotte's cousin. Marcus told me she'd been crying in the bathroom, overheard her on the phone saying she couldn't do it anymore. I took a risk. I called her directly. Ashley, this is Harper Lane. We need to talk. I can't. You're 26 years old. Do you want to go to federal prison for your cousin? We met in a parking garage, like something out of a spy movie. Ashley looked terrified, exhausted. She'd lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes. I didn't know, she said immediately. When I took the job, I thought. Charlotte said you were incompetent, that you'd been stealing. And now? Now they want me to sign off on documents I know are falsified. They're backdating shipments, creating fake vendors. She pulled out a flash drive. I've been copying everything. I don't want to go to jail for them. The flash drive was gold. Not just evidence of the current fraud, but communications going back 2 years. Emails between Mitchell and Charlotte discussing exactly how to inflate claims, hide money, eliminate anyone who asked questions, including an email thread about me. Harper's getting too close to the March shipments. Need to find a reason to let her go. Dated 2 weeks before that 90-second phone call. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked Ashley. With what? My word against theirs. Charlotte's my family. Mitchell has connections everywhere. She was crying now. I just wanted a good job. I just wanted to make my parents proud. I understood that. We all did. We'd all just wanted to work, to build something, to matter. Instead, we'd been fed into a machine that ran on our dedication and discarded us when we threatened its corruption. There's a journalist, I said. Olivia Trent. She can protect you. Keep your name out of it if you cooperate. Will they go to jail? If there's any justice left in Coldford, yes. Ashley laughed through her tears. Justice, in Coldford. You really have been unemployed too long. But she agreed to talk to Olivia. With her testimony and the flash drive, we had everything. Mitchell and Charlotte's own words condemning them. Evidence of systematic fraud. Proof of the network of corruption that had protected them. Now came the dangerous part. Going public. Once Olivia published, there would be no taking it back. Mitchell and Charlotte would know exactly who had destroyed them. Are you ready for this? Olivia asked. Once we publish, your life changes. You'll be the whistleblower. Some people will call you a hero. Others will call you a rat. I thought about my empty apartment, my dwindling bank account, the months of silence and rejection. I thought about Rick's shaking hands, Natalie's overnight shifts, Tommy's careful eyes, Ashley's tears. I've already lost everything that mattered to me, I said. Might as well make it mean something. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Olivia had worked with her editor all weekend, fact-checking every detail, verifying every source. The headline was understated but devastating. Veronix Logistics executives accused of multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. I watched from my apartment window as the first police car pulled up to Veronix at 7:43 a.m., then another, then three more. By 8:15, the parking lot looked like a law enforcement convention. Federal agents in windbreakers, state police, even the local cops Mitchell had thought he owned. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the article went live at 6 a.m. Reporters, former colleagues, numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. This wasn't about me anymore. Marcus texted me updates from inside. They're seizing everything, computers, files, even Mitchell's coffee mug. Charlotte tried to leave through the loading dock. They were waiting. The local news picked it up by noon. Mitchell's face on every channel. That corporate headshot from the company website now labeled Breaking, CEO arrested in fraud investigation. Charlotte's LinkedIn photo beside it. They looked so professional, so trustworthy. The masks we all wear to work. By evening, the story had gone national. Veronix wasn't just any company, it handled distribution for major tech brands. The scandal rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Stock prices fluctuated. Client companies issued statements distancing themselves. The mayor called a press conference to express his shock and disappointment. Natalie called from her shift at the grocery store. Harper, are you seeing this? They're saying Mitchell might get 20 years. It's not over yet. They have good lawyers. But the evidence doesn't always mean justice. You know that. She was quiet for a moment. You did this, didn't you? You brought them down. Olivia Trent did. I just pointed her in the right direction. Harper. Her voice caught. Thank you. The next few days blurred together. The FBI wanted to interview me. The state attorney general's office needed my testimony. Olivia published follow-up articles, each one revealing new layers of corruption. The Regent storage facility was raided. 3 city officials were suspended. The insurance companies launched their own investigations. Mitchell was released on a $2 million bond. The footage of him leaving the courthouse was everything I'd imagined: disheveled, angry, diminished. His lawyer made a statement about false allegations and disgruntled former employees. But even he didn't sound convinced. Charlotte didn't make bail. She was considered a flight risk after they found she'd booked tickets to Montenegro, a country with no extradition treaty. Her cousin Ashley was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation. I heard she'd moved back in with her parents, was taking online classes to become a teacher. A week after the arrests, I got an unexpected call. William Brennan, the chairman of Veronix's board. Ms. Lane, I wanted to personally apologize for what happened to you. The board had no knowledge of Mr. Grady's activities. I doubted that but stayed quiet. We're conducting a full restructuring. We'd like to offer you your position back. With a promotion. Vice President of Operations. 50% salary increase. The old Harper would have cried with relief, would have said yes immediately, grateful for the validation, the reversal of fortune. No thank you, I heard myself say. I'm sorry. I don't want it. Any of it. Ms. Lane, this is a generous offer considering... Considering what? That you let Mitchell destroy people's lives for years? That your oversight was so lacking he could steal millions? That you only care now because you got caught? I understand you're angry. I'm not angry, Mr. Brennan. I'm done. Veronix took 9 years from me. You don't get any more. I hung up on him. It felt better than I'd imagined. The trials would take months, maybe years. Olivia kept me updated, but I stopped following every detail. Mitchell's assets were frozen. Charlotte was trying to make a deal, offering to testify against him. The company was hemorrhaging clients, laying off the workers who'd survived our purge. Rick got a job driving for a local brewery, a union position with benefits. Tommy was hired by a security firm that specialized in corporate fraud prevention. Turns out, being a whistleblower was great for his resume. Marcus left Veronix before the layoffs hit, took a remote position with a startup. The day they found Mitchell guilty on 17 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering, I was at a hardware store buying paint. My phone buzzed with the news alert, but I didn't read it immediately. I was choosing between 2 shades of blue for my bedroom wall, thinking about new beginnings. That night, I stood in my apartment surrounded by boxes again, but this time, I was the one choosing to leave. A small tech company in Oregon had offered me a position, not operations, but compliance, making sure companies followed the rules. The irony wasn't lost on me. Someone had spray-painted "snitch" on my door the week before, probably one of Mitchell's supporters, the people who still believed he was a victim of corporate persecution. I'd painted over it, but you could still see the outline if you knew where to look. My phone rang. An unknown number I recognized. Mitchell's personal cell. He was calling from federal prison, where he'd been immediately remanded after the verdict. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Harper. His voice was different. Older. Defeated. Mitchell. You destroyed everything. No, you did that yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. I gave you a career. You gave me a job. I built my own career, and you tried to destroy it to cover your crimes. Silence. Then, quieter. Charlotte made a deal. She's testifying that it was all my idea. Was it? A bitter laugh. Does it matter now? It matters to the people you hurt. Rick, Natalie, Marcus, all of us you threw away. It was business, Harper, nothing personal. That's the problem. Mitchell. It was personal to us, our lives, our families, our futures. You treated us like inventory, disposable, replaceable. Everyone's replaceable, including you. Apparently. The line went dead. It would be the last time we ever spoke. 6 months had passed since Mitchell's conviction. I was 3 weeks into my new job in Oregon, still learning the names of my coworkers, when my phone rang during lunch. A federal detention center number I'd memorized from seeing it on my caller ID that one time before. You have a collect call from... Mitchell's voice cut in. Mitchell, Grady. I almost declined, but something made me accept. Harper. He sounded different this time. Not defeated exactly, but hollowed out, like an echo of the man who used to command conference rooms. What do you want, Mitchell? I've had time to think. 6 months of nothing but time. That must be nice. I had plenty of time too when you fired me. A pause. I know what you did. The full scope of it, the fake auditor, the planted calls, getting Ashley to turn. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult me, Harper. I may be in here, but I'm not stupid. It was elegant, really, using our own paranoia against us. If you're looking for congratulations, I'm looking for understanding. His voice cracked slightly. Do you know what it's like in here, for someone like me? I ran a company. Now I clean toilets for 11 cents an hour. You want sympathy, after everything? I want to know why. Why you didn't just walk away. Find another job. Move on. I stood up from my desk, walked to the window of my new office. Portland stretched out below, gray and green, and nothing like Coldford. You really don't get it, do you? Even now. Enlighten me. I've got 7 to 10 years to understand. You called me that morning like I was nothing. 9 years, Mitchell, 9 years of 60-hour weeks, missed holidays, canceled vacations. My mother died while I was finishing your quarterly reports. I didn't even take a full week off for her funeral because you needed those numbers. That was your choice. No, it was survival. You made sure of that. The implied threats, the constant reminder that we were all replaceable. We lived in fear of that phone call. All of us. And when it finally came, you gave me 90 seconds. It was business. It was cruel and unnecessary. You could have given me warning, severance, a reference, something, anything. Instead, you erased me. You. I could hear his breathing on the other end, rhythmic and institutional. So I erased you back, I continued. Only I did it better, because I had nothing left to lose. You had your dignity. Dignity, I laughed. Dignity doesn't pay rent, it doesn't buy groceries, it doesn't keep the lights on. You took my livelihood and tried to blame me for your crimes. You want to talk about dignity. Charlotte says you orchestrated everything, that you knew about the fraud all along and set us up when I fired you. Charlotte's trying to save herself. She'll say anything. Maybe. Or maybe you're more like us than you want to admit. The words stung because they weren't entirely wrong. I had become calculating, manipulative, ruthless. I'd learned from the best. There's a difference, I said. I did it for justice. You did it for greed. Justice. He repeated the word like it was foreign. Is that what you call destroying a company? Hundreds of people lost their jobs because of what you did. Because of what you did, you and Charlotte, you hollowed out that company, made it rotten from the inside. I just exposed the rot. And now you're satisfied? Now you can sleep at night? I thought about the question. The truth was complicated. Some nights I slept like the dead, exhausted from my new job, my new life. Other nights I lay awake, replaying every moment, wondering if I'd gone too far, if I'd become the monster I'd fought. I sleep better than you do, I'm sure. He laughed, bitter and sharp. Actually, the sleep here isn't bad. It's the waking up that's hell. Every morning, remembering where I am, what I've lost, what you threw away. Same difference from in here. A pause. They're moving me tomorrow. Maximum security. Apparently, some of the inmates found out I was management. They don't like management in here. For a moment, I felt something close to pity. Then I remembered Derek, the security guard, unable to meet my eyes. Rick shaking hands, Natalie stocking shelves at midnight. Why did you really call Mitchell? I wanted you to know something. The board knew about the fraud. Not everything, but enough. They only turned on me when you made it public, when it threatened their own positions. Why tell me this? Because you think you won. But people like them always win. They'll find another Mitchell, another Charlotte. The machine keeps running. Harper, you just changed the oil. Maybe, but you're not running anything anymore. No, I'm not. His voice was quiet now, resigned. You know what the worst part is? I don't even remember making the decision to fire you. It was just another Tuesday. Another name on a list. I probably had lunch right after. 90 seconds. That's what I was worth. 60, actually. The call lasted 90. But the decision took 60. The precision of it, the casual cruelty, still took my breath away. Goodbye, Mitchell. Harper, wait. What? In another life, we could have been a good team. You and me. You had the skills, the drive. If you'd just been more flexible. You mean corrupt. I mean practical. That's the difference between us, Mitchell. You see corruption as practical. I see it as weakness. You couldn't succeed honestly, so you cheated. And when I found out, you tried to throw me away. But I'm not disposable. None of us were. Everyone's disposable, Harper, even you. Your new company will realize that eventually. Maybe. But they'll have to look me in the eye when they do it. They'll have to acknowledge I'm human. That's all any of us wanted from you. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or anger. From something else. Closure? Maybe. Or just exhaustion from carrying this weight for so long. My new boss knocked on my door. Everything okay, Harper? Yes, just dealing with some old business. Well, when you're done, we have that compliance meeting at 2. I'll be there. She smiled and left. A normal interaction. Professional. Human. I blocked the detention center number and deleted Mitchell's contact. There would be no more calls, no more connections to that life. He was right about one thing. Everyone was disposable in corporate America, but wrong about another. We didn't have to accept it quietly. That night, I called Natalie. She'd been promoted to shift manager at the grocery store. It wasn't much, but it was something. He called me today. I told her. Mitchell. What did he want? To understand, to make me feel guilty, to have the last word. Did he? I looked around my new apartment, boxes still unpacked, but mine. A future still uncertain, but mine. A life still being rebuilt, but mine. No, I think I did. I sold the apartment in Coldford through a real estate agent I never met in person. Everything was digital signatures and wire transfers. The new owners were a young couple, first-time buyers, excited about starting their lives. I left them a note wishing them better luck than I'd had there. The drive to Oregon had taken 3 days. I could have flown. But I needed the time, the miles, the gradual transformation of landscape from industrial decay to evergreen hope. Somewhere in Idaho. I threw my Veronix ID badge out the window. It disappeared into the sagebrush like it had never existed. Portland was nothing like Coldford. Here, no one knew who Harper Lane was. I wasn't the whistleblower, the woman who brought down Mitchell Grady, the cautionary tale of corporate revenge. I was just another transplant, starting over in the city where people came to start over. I rented a small house in the Southeast District with a patch of yard that had gone wild. The previous tenants had attempted a garden but abandoned it, leaving behind raised beds full of weeds and possibility. I spent my weekends pulling blackberry vines, their thorns drawing blood through my gloves. There was something therapeutic about it, removing what didn't belong, making space for new growth. The job at the tech company was deliberately small, deliberately quiet. They made educational software for kids with learning disabilities. No one was getting rich, but no one was stealing either. My boss, Janet, had read about the Veronix scandal. She never mentioned it. But I caught her looking at me sometimes with something between respect and wariness. I learned to exist in the spaces between who I'd been and who I was becoming. Mornings were for coffee and coding reviews. Evenings were for the garden, coaxing tomatoes and herbs from soil that had forgotten how to grow things. I bought books about composting, about Portland's growing seasons, about building raised beds. My hands, which had spent 9 years on keyboards and spreadsheets, learned the texture of earth. 6 months in Portland, I joined a community garden group. Nobody asked about my past. They cared about my opinions on organic pest control and whether I could help with the newsletter. I became Harper, who grew exceptional basil, who knew how to fix the irrigation system, who brought homemade salsa to the potlucks. A year passed. Mitchell was serving his sentence. Charlotte got 3 years in minimum security and would be out in 18 months with good behavior. Veronix had been bought by a larger company, absorbed and rebranded until it existed only in court documents and the resumes of people trying to distance themselves from it. Natalie visited once. We sat in my backyard, drinking wine from coffee mugs because I hadn't bought proper glasses yet. "You did it," she said. "You really started over. We all did, in different ways. But you burned it all down first." Tiev, I exposed what was already rotten. There's a difference. She studied me. Do you regret it? I thought about the question while watching bees work through my lavender plants. I regret that it was necessary. I regret the years I wasted believing that loyalty meant something to them. But the act itself? No. Even though you became like them? Manipulative, calculated? I used their tools against them. That doesn't make me them. I paused. At least, that's what I tell myself. And you believe it? Most days. Rick sent Christmas cards with pictures of his kids. Tommy had started his own security consulting firm. Marcus was engaged to someone he met at his new job. We were all scattered now. Seeds blown from a poisoned plant, taking root in better soil. Sometimes I'd get emails from journalists wanting follow-ups, true crime podcasters interested in the story. I deleted them all. That chapter was closed, even if its echoes still rippled through my dreams. The second spring in Portland, I was teaching a workshop at the community garden when a familiar face appeared in the crowd. Ashley Brennan, Charlotte's cousin. She looked healthier, the haunted expression replaced by something calmer. "I heard you were here," she said after the workshop. "I'm starting a master's program at Portland State, Education, like we talked about." "That's good, Ashley. That's really good. I wanted to thank you for giving me the chance to make it right. You made that choice yourself. But you showed me it was possible to fight back, even when it costs everything." We didn't become friends, but we'd occasionally run into each other at farmers' markets or coffee shops. Two women who'd survived Veronix in different ways, rebuilding in the same city, 3 years after leaving Coldford. I stood in my garden at dusk, harvesting tomatoes for a sauce I'd learned to make from a YouTube video. My hands were dirty, my back ached, and I felt more real than I had in any climate-controlled office. The plants didn't care about my past. They only cared whether I watered them, whether I noticed the aphids in time, whether I supported their weight as they grew. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Mitchell Grady had died in prison. Heart attack. He was 57. The article was brief, focusing more on the scandal than the man. I read it once, then deleted it. That night, I made dinner with my own vegetables, drank wine from a proper glass I'd finally bought, and sat on my porch watching the neighborhood kids play basketball under the streetlights. Their laughter carried on the evening air, pure and unencumbered. I thought about revenge, how I'd imagined it would feel like victory, but it hadn't. It had felt like necessity, like cauterizing a wound, like controlled demolition of a condemned building. The satisfaction wasn't in Mitchell's destruction, but in my own reconstruction. My neighbor waved from his porch. "Beautiful evening, Harper." "Yes," I called back. "It really is." And for the first time in years, I meant it completely. I hadn't won. There were no winners in what happened, but I had survived. I had refused to be erased. I had planted new seeds in better ground. The tomatoes were perfect that year, sweet and real and honest. Nothing like the artificial corporate success I'd once chased, but infinitely more nourishing. I saved the seeds, dried them carefully on paper towels, stored them in envelopes labeled with the date and variety. Next season, they would grow again, stronger, untainted by what came before. Revenge isn't an ending. It's a reminder that we were once dismissed as worthless, but we were never weak. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Harper's position? Your perspectives make these stories richer for everyone.